Yeah. Spark it up, Captain G3. Let's go. Oh. Lights pop on and the rhythm's tight. Got that green thumb boogie in the pale moonlight. Mixing up the soil, got the funk foundation. Tune your dollar cultivation conversation. Shake that leaf, turn up the vibe. Grow talk, groove talk, keeping it live. From seed to sensation, no hesitation. We riding high, cultivation conversation. Drop that pH, raise that soul. Let the terps take control. Funky buds in every nation. Captain and G3, the cultivation station. Stay funky, stay green.
What is going on, everybody out there in podcast land? How are you tonight?
Hello, my darlings. Look who we have with us today.
We have a very special guest, everybody. His name is Woody.
Also known as Hasherky. And he is here to teach us about static tech. Yay, Hash. So, Woody, thank you so much for being here with us tonight. We really appreciate it.
Hey, no problem. Glad to be here.
Yay.
That's what's up. I mean, if you can't tell from the resin, well, the trichome head laden latex glove in the image, that is kind of what static tech is all about, right, sir?
Correct. I will just say that it is a nitrile glove, but we'll get into that later.
Ah, okay. Very key distinction. I appreciate it. We're gonna have to break this all down for these people over here, because I'll be honest, man. Until
latex gloves anymore?
until I knew that you were a guest coming on the show, I had not heard of this technique.
Yeah, I mean it's been around in some form for a while, but I'd say in the last year or two, it's starting to really gain a little bit of traction with some people. There's some machines that have come out that kind of automate the process a bit for like the commercial side of things. So it's kind of gaining a little bit of traction with some more products being out there and more people being, I guess, exposed to them.
That's cool. That's very cool. So it's not like a new technique. It's been around for a little bit, but kind of gaining prominence as like hash really kind of starts to take a spotlight.
Yeah, well, I think like it's been around, certain forms of it have been around for a while, but just using the glove versus some of the other methods is one of the more new steps in it, and it actually kind of made it a little easier and less tedious than some of the old ways that people would utilize static for refinement. So it's kind of, reborn, I guess, with a little bit more promise this time for some people
Cool.
that might have put it away for it being just not their jam at the time, or not as effective as they needed it to be.
Awesome. Our techniques have been refined. It's been improved. Methods have been definitely improved. So, all right, before we get into it, because, man, I'm so interested in this. I'm so interested in this topic because, man, do I ever have material, let's say, sitting in a freezer in my basement that's like just waiting for me to get on the hash train with it. And I think doing it with like dry sifting would be the way for me to do it. And then, yeah, like I would want a method to clean that dry sift then afterwards. So, and yeah, I'm very interested in this. But first, G3, you want to go? What are you smoking on tonight?
Yep. I got LGC, the Lemon Guru cheese from Moongrown. Ooh, actually, I'm going to, because you guys have heard me say something about it a bajillion times, I actually have a line from Dolly, because, I love her and she's amazing and she's so good with terpenes and all of that. So I actually sent her some and she reviewed it and sent me a thing. So I wanted to let you know what she says about it because you've heard me talk about it before. So she says, smell and taste, inhale, zesty lemon peel, citrus oil, and the exhale is creamy, funky cheese with a lingering skunk note. Likely dominant terps, limonene, caryophyllene, myrcene, maybe a tiny bit of pinene. Feels pretty balanced, like a couch sativa. I don't have a lot of brain fog, but I feel relaxed. Starts off with an uplifting mental buzz and moves into a gradual, gentle body relaxation. Not super body heavy, but I can feel muscles relaxing. I'd call this a good midday, early afternoon smoke. Might be good for stress and mood support, mild pain and or inflammation, mild appetite stimulation, and may help some with mental fatigue for some users. Thanks, Dolly. You're the best.
That's great. I'm going to need you to repeat the whole thing now once we turn up your mic settings. I'm just kidding. You don't need to repeat the whole thing. But we're getting some people telling us we can't hear you. So maybe just pull the mic closer to your face. There you go.
Mic up. Can you hear me better? Is that better? Yay, nay.
We're hearing better.
Okay.
Hearing better? Okay, I guess. No, that's
talk right here like it's ASMR.
No, please don't do that. Please don't.
No, I'm not.
Please
Now this
don't.
feels like very claustrophobic. Okay. Okay.
That's cool. Thank you, Dolly. We appreciate you. Awesome member of our community and her own little community. Not little, big community.
Big community.
Awesome community.
She's incredible. If you got pain.
Yeah, over in the
and,
slow lane.
Whatever, her salves are incredible.
I'll tell you what, that Dolly's pain salve is on my, like, right there on my coffee table because I reach for it when I got any kind of ache or pain. Good stuff.
So good.
So yeah, tonight I got a little bit of orange gasm. Irie Genetics, super tangy, but like not in that acrid sort of way, like peels and pith, you know, just the juice. A lot of good orange terps in this. I'm enjoying it a lot. So thank you, Neighborhood Skunk, for the cut.
Yep, she's lovely.
I don't think it would be a great hash plant at all. Like this, you know what I mean? Like some strains you can just tell. And this one, like I showed you on that last show, I don't have any here to hold up, but it's just got orange hairs all through it. Like trichomes, yeah, but lots of orange hairs. And I don't think it would hash at all. Like it's great flower for smoking, but yeah, I don't know. Have you ever encountered strains like that, Woody?
What, that don't hash?
Yeah, just like no matter what method, you know, whether it's...
Oh yeah, there's some stuff that just is better as flour.
For sure.
You know, there's lots of different ways to extract, and some of them are good for certain genetics and some just aren't, and it's kind of up to the extractor to figure out what tool in their toolkit will like give you the best expression of that resin. And sometimes it's just as, you know, as it was grown, a flower, and it can't be refined any further to be improved.
So you could get different results from different extraction methods? Like if you're
absolutely.
using... Wow. I always kind of thought extraction was extraction and you got kind of the same result.
No,
the way
because they all
the
rely
tri
on
comes off the plant.
different methods of extraction, right? Because if you're blasting, you're using like hydrocarbons to pull out your terpenes and cannabinoids. So it's kind of what can be absorbed into that hydrocarbon, right? And then for water hash, you're kind of using buoyancy, where the heads will fall, and then they have to be a certain shape and a certain toughness to be able to deal with the water and that process. And then with dry sifting, it's a totally different process. So you're using different methods, right? So there will be heads that will be more conducive to that and heads that will be less conducive to that, right?
Awesome. We are definitely going to have to go into how you choose what extraction method to use. That's crazy.
Yeah, if there is a way to tell, I mean,
big difference like that. All right.
Well, because I mean, as we're gonna kind of find out, like with what the technology that Woody is about to share with us, this static tech, is you're turning like dry sift into an ultra pure product a lot like like a water extraction or some kind of other solventless extract that like pure hash. No
Yeah.
Chaz in that banger. None.
So there is, yeah, I guess it's an extra step on the dry sift process to get you a further level of refinement using static electricity as the, um, I guess, tool to target the heads.
Okay. I love it, man. So, you want to just get right into it? I mean, like you got like a pretty extensive video
Yeah,
collection
like
on
how you.
your
Well, I want to know
Instagram, and
like how you
I
first
mean,
got into it, and we're
yeah,
not
what
skipping over what Woody is smoking tonight. He actually does not consume. He's in it for the love of the game. So we're not like
he's just
screw it. You're smoking.
a
But he's just
trichome chef.
Yeah, I mean,
yes.
I did smoke a lot in the 90s and early 2000s, but I ended up getting a job that requires me to, be able to pass certain tests and things. So I had to
Oh,
give
understood, sir.
that up a while
Understandable.
ago. But yeah, I mean, I did love hash and weed a lot growing up, and hash was the first thing I ever smoked. So it's kind of why I have that
Interesting.
little little spot in my
Wow.
heart for it. Yeah, and now it's
Yeah,
just
that's
kind of
cool.
like a hobby. Yeah,
I
keeps
didn't
me.
even know hash was a thing until I was like decades into beginning to smoke.
Well, it's kind of like where you grew up, right? So
I think I was just gonna say that. Yeah.
I was on the East Coast next to a big port. You're obviously going to get a lot of imports from overseas, right? So those things are going to come in usually hash form because there's a lot of the hash on the western side of Europe, right? Like you're looking at Spain, um, and then all the different routes that you're getting from some of the more producing countries, right? North Africa and into the Middle East and stuff. They're all going to come through ports on the west coast of Europe and then land on the east coast of North America. So you're kind of in the mecca of where it's all collected, and then it kind of gets distributed out throughout the country from there, right? So
For sure. Easier to ship hash than it is to ship flour.
yeah, and the great thing is the longer it takes to get there, the more aged it is, right? So if it's
Yeah.
a year journey from where it was made to where it gets to you, you're kind of getting a deal on that because the longer you wait, usually the better it is.
Like a fine
Right.
wine.
It should be like a saltwater hash taffy, saltwater taffy hash. Is that a thing?
Like it
I
can
mean,
be.
I've seen people pull and twist the hash like it's taffy.
Mm-hmm.
It's after a nice saltwater cure, it's even better. Well, yeah, man, that's like so. How did you got into this just because was the first thing you ever smoked? You kind of saw this like coming down the pike, or how did you get clued into this method of refining your trichome heads? Because again, like I've been in the scene. I like to consider myself hip and with it, but I've never heard of this before. So
Well, I mean, I guess early 2000s, I did some blasting and some very like low level hash making, and then kind of gave it up for a while. Technology back then wasn't great. Um, and then right around legalization here in Canada, I started growing, and I kind of, since I can't smoke it, I wanted to continue the process after it was grown to be able to play with it a bit more. So I decided, why not learn to make hash? And I actually started with making water hash. So I kind of just
okay,
sat down and researched all the different methods of ways of making hash, and then kind of decided that I'd probably eventually want to do everything, but that water hash for where I was living at the time was probably the easiest um, method for me to be able to make hash. So I did that for a few years, and then about I want to say 3 years ago, um, I kind of decided that water hash for me, at least in interest, had kind of run its course, and I had learned what I wanted to learn, and it was getting more like a mundane sort of thing. There wasn't that spark of like learning and experiencing and discovering that I was looking for in my hobby. So I
okay,
decided it was time to move on to a new method. And I had a friend Stephen Martek goes by Tan Hat 710 at the time, and for years he was posting pictures of just like that, the glove full of heads. I didn't really know what was going on, but I slowly kind of got talking to him about it, and it took me about a year and a half or 2 years, and then I just decided one day, okay, I'm all in. Tell me what I need to get. And I ordered everything, and he kind of walked me through. I would say he at the time was probably one of the most experienced static sifters like in the industry. Um, and he was like one of those guys on the forefront of it. So I really got to learn from one of the really great early adopters of the tech. And I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now and know what I know if it wasn't for him, like getting me over the first few roadblocks and speed bumps that you kind of encounter when you're starting to learn the tech. So yeah, props to him for doing everything he did for me to get me on the path.
Hey, did
Cool,
you-
man. Yo, dude, we all stand on the shoulders of giants. I think, good to recognize. Quick
Yeah.
question,
I mean,
man.
seeing that glove, it's like those hypercolor shirts.
Yeah.
As
Reminds me
soon
of
as I
body
saw that, I
glove.
was like, "What is this? I need to know exactly what this is because this looks absolutely beautiful."
Quick question from Cushcat Grow. Is there a Frenchy cannoli equivalent or Timu version for dry sifting and static tech videos on YouTube?
Yeah, on YouTube there'd be like an older guy, and I think he went by Phil 710. He had some really nice videos, long format videos on the dry sifting and the static tech. Tan Hat also with I think Sambo Creek Filtration. They put him on. They're one of the makers of those machines that I had mentioned earlier. So
Cool.
they were one of the early people. I think they have Tribal Electric Thursdays and a few other things. So if you go back a couple years on Sambo Creek, they have some nice videos on that. I think maybe Wolverine Dabs might put out a few videos, but yeah, I would say two or three of those people. If you start watching them, they'll be nice long form videos of the process. And then my Instagram, I kind of shortened it up a little bit, but I have a lot of step by step stuff on there just to kind of show the process in bite size chunks for people. I had a much better Instagram, and they kind of took it from me a few months ago, and I had to rebuild. So from
Heartbreaking.
4,000 down to 300 or 400, I think I'm at right now. But we're slowly rebuilding, and it's looking better and better every day. So
All you can do, man.
yep.
Well, I would love to bring up your Instagram page. If you have like a landing point for me, I mean, should I just go right to step one in your static glove tech tutorial?
Sure, yeah, if you want. We can start there and just work our way through. Or if there's anything else that kind of piques your interest before we get
I mean,
into that,
geez,
I
there's
can.
a whole lot, dude. I
Yeah,
mean, you're making temple balls. You just here. Let's just bring up the whole page, starting from the very bottom.
sure.
I mean, you said you wanted to do it all, right? That's all.
Why not? Why not? Here we are. Oh, look at that. Always, every single time, G3.
It wouldn't be us if we didn't do it.
All right, we're getting back in there. It's just like one of those hiccups because I have the video set, Yeah,
Yeah, multiple.
don't
things
listen to my
happened.
excuses. Just get better, Captain. All right.
So, were you into how many years ago did you start working with static tech? And have you been able to consume any of your own work from that? Or have you been like abstaining that entire time?
Uh, I've been abstaining for about 12 or 13 years, and I've been into the static tech for 3. So no, I haven't ever tried any of the hash
Wow.
I've made ever. So
That's amazing. I mean, it truly is for the love.
Yeah, man.
yeah,
Just
I
Incredible.
mean, you got to do
I
something,
love
right?
the passion.
love of the game. And you still get to smell all the terps and stuff too. I mean, that's that. I can imagine myself doing that if I ever had a job such as yours where you really got to worry about passing a test and all that stuff. Like, I mean, I'd still want to be around it.
Yeah, I mean, I have lots of friends who are my guinea pigs that will happily try things and tell me, what I need to improve on or how I did, right? And I have my own metrics and ways of at least figuring out if what I did was good for what I wanted. Um, so yeah, it's I guess maybe I'm not tied to it as much as you guys are, where you have an end goal where you want it to get you a certain way. So if it does that for you, then really all of the other metrics kind of maybe don't matter as much. Whereas I don't get that endpoint, so it's really the process for me that matters. And I'm more of like I want to do the process well and perfectly to try to get it as good as I can from the stuff that I can can understand, like the smell of it, the look of it, the how it reacts, the cleanliness, things like that, right? So I'm not really held to it's good enough because it gets me high or whatever, right? Like I have to enjoy what I'm doing, so I want to really make sure I do a good job, so I have something that I can be proud of as far as uh, I guess a crafted item. Um,
Yeah, it's an
more,
art.
yeah, it's I guess you could say it's a little bit of an art project for me, right? So.
You know what, man? Like, we'll see a lot more pictures of like you working with the resin and stuff. But what it reminds me a lot of is like a baker. And if you've ever made dough yourself, you understand like how impossible it seems to like work with at first. You're like, it's tacky and it's getting all over your hands, and it's getting all over the tools, it's getting all over your your workplace. You know what I mean? It gets everywhere. But the experienced baker knows how to work with it at, let's say, certain temperature, certain like humidity in the air. There's just like there is a true art to working with dough. It reminds me a lot of that.
Yeah, definitely. And there are a lot of similarities too. Humidity is a big part of dry sifting as well as temperature too. So, yeah, you really kind of have to be watching your environment as much as your material to be able to have things work the way you want them to.
All right, great. All right, so what we're looking at here in the video, this is end product, right? Like
Yeah,
this is
that's some of the end product. I believe that is probably some of the stuff that I may have pressed a little bit. I was looking to try to sort of replicate Piatella without actually having 6-star material. So that's more of a like oddly cured resin to like a rosin. So I would have pressed it in like heat plates and bags after I static sifted it, and then tried to see if I could get it in like a sort of loaf style, dabbable loaf style that replicated something along the lines of what Piatella might sort of look like. But it's not quite there, but it was
oh,
just
looks good to me,
That's
man.
yeah,
I
amazing.
would
something to
I
play
would
with.
smoke that.
Holy cow.
Something a little darker. Is this just a like a matter of curing the end product then? A
Uh,
different
like to
method in
get that
making it?
consistency or the color.
Oh, both, I guess. Yeah,
Uh,
because that looks more like that
gingerbread
paella,
ale.
that
Yeah, the Piatella stuff.
piatella. When I
Yeah,
say paella, it's
close
like,
enough. Yeah, and some color is due to um, what you're kind of doing with it, but a lot of it is determined by sort of the material you're working with. Because if you have full term, full sun, full amber heads, they're already amber, so you're not going to get anything but amber out of the product, right? It's only going to
ah,
be what it is or darker, right? So yeah, Instagram kind of got people into thinking that the whiter the rosin or the whiter the hash, the better it was. But I mean, there's a line to where too much color kind of may look or show you that it's a bad product. But there's definitely a range of hues that are all
oh yeah, no,
acceptable, right?
that looks phenomenal. That's
Just
like
do
G3 said, like a gingerbread cookie.
Yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like using grapes, right? You can use white grapes or you can use red grapes. Red wine isn't dirtier than white wine. It's just made from a different grape with a
Ah,
different color in it, right? And then you're going to get a different end product, but it just doesn't mean that just because it's darker than the other one that it's somehow less.
great comparison. So, like, yeah, I mean, ripeness of the trichome, oxidized parts of the trichome too, right? Like amber
Yeah,
heads.
and pigments inside, right? If you have something that has a lot of anthocyanins inside the head, then it might
Gotcha.
come out a different color, right? Yeah,
Cool.
lots of factors that go in, but don't be scared of a little color, right? Like a lot of competitions, I think uh, there would be a lot of different first place if it was a blind dabbing contest versus guys getting to look at the jar because people just like bag appeal with flour, people smoke with their eyes. So um, yeah, I think that there'd be a lot of people who would be surprised at what they'd enjoy if they couldn't see it, um, and color wasn't something that they were trying to grade on.
That makes so much sense, and I
For
have
sure.
absolutely been unfairly biased. It makes so much sense. I mean,
I mean, to a
I'm
point, if it looks like black tar, then it's probably really old and
yeah,
oxidized and might not be the best,
but
right? But there's a
within the
range of
spectrum of
hues. Yeah, yeah.
trichomes, yeah, like I don't want my trichomes to be clear. So like, why would I want my hash to be next to clear?
So
Yep.
you did say, like, you don't want it to be to look like a tar or black, but like here we have, like, this is much darker. I mean, look at that temple ball though. I mean, that's beautiful. So
Yeah.
what makes this like still, I mean, cuz that it doesn't, I guess, look like black tar. That's still brown.
Yeah, so it's a shade of like chocolate, I guess. But the
Yeah.
difference is
Dude, that looks
that would
great.
be a whole head hash product, right? So that was made with just the static separated trichome heads, but full heads. It wasn't pressed through any bag just to further refine it and only
Gotcha.
let the oils inside out. And part of the color too is how thick is it, right? So if I were to make that a very thin sheet, it would look a lot lighter because air, like the light can pass through it. So the more you homogenize something into a large block, the harder it is for light to get through. Therefore, you're going to get darker colors out of it, right?
That's beautiful though. Look at that thing, man.
The shine
Whew.
on that.
Yeah. All right. So we're gonna learn how to make these tonight, right? Like, or
Sure. Yeah.
something like that. Let's start at the beginning here, because like I want to see this process, man. I mean, the end products are beautiful. I mean, geez, look at these hash cubes you got going on. I mean, it literally does look like fudge that you
Yeah,
get
yeah.
at the boardwalk. I'm thinking of the boardwalk tonight. I'm like saltwater taffy and fudge
Hmm.
and old school hash made from refined dry sift.
Like the beach.
I can hear the seagulls right now. I'm at the Jersey Shore. Yeah, it's beautiful, man. It's beautiful. So, like, what intrigues me so much too is that, like, this, just starting with this video, this doesn't look like. I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, this material. Is it full bud, or are you starting with like trim here?
Yeah, most of the stuff I do is trim, right? So, pro
Hell yeah.
like everything that you've seen on all of those pictures, including the rosin, and then some of the rosin that's up above as well on my page, it's all from trim, right? Because it may not be the greatest to smoke, but heads are heads are heads. So
Absolutely, man.
they're on the sugar leaves just as they are on the buds, right? So you can extract them, right? And that's the great thing about it is that you can take the heads off whatever they're on and then get rid of all that other stuff. So you can end up with maybe less than you would from buds, but still a nice, clean, refined product because there's no real difference in the trikes. One of the better things about using trim, especially in this day and age, is if you do get those gardens or farmers that are pulling early because they want to have more cycles in the room in a year or whatever, the buds themselves are going to have those clear trike heads. But the sugar leaves, they're the first to amber, right? So you're going to get a more mature, full term head off the trim when these guys are pulling early to try to get that white, clear
That's a
kind
great
of
point,
look.
dude.
Yeah.
Amazing.
We all know, as growers, we check our buds, not our sugar leaves, as far as ripeness goes, because the first thing to turn amber is your sugar leaves.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that should show you that like that's the quality that's sitting on those sugar leaves, right? Like all of those products are just fine hash products, right? It's just a matter of doing the first step of extraction, which is taking the heads off of the material, right? No matter what you're doing, whether it's water hash or dry sifting, right? The first step is to you need to separate the plant material from the head and the stalk, right? Um,
Yeah, and
so
now we're
that
just taking like dried trim. It's already been dried. It's already been trimmed, right? We're not doing any freezing or freeze drying after harvest. It's just normally processed material, right? Like there's flour in a
Dried and
jar.
cured or just dried?
Sure, like we can get into those kind of ideas later because there's probably some things I'd want to say as like, not the base level sifting. There are some other options that might be possible, but
Okay.
ideally dry sift is dry sift. So you need dry material and the drier the better, right? You're not talking like buds that are dry enough to smoke. You're talking buds that are so dry that you may not want to smoke them is the consistency you're looking for because the drier it is, the easier it's going to be to work with, right? You don't want moisture, you want them dry. So you accidentally over dry your harvest and it's like crispy dry, and you're like, ugh, what do I do? Do I try to use some Bavita packs maybe to
Nah,
get
yeah,
it back?
it's too
Or you
late.
can, well, you can now dry sift that material, right?
Love it.
Um, and there's just another tool that you have in your growing and extracting toolkit to use in certain situations with certain strains to get something that may be better than what the original product is, or a better showcase, right? Take away the things that are bad, which is that leaf that didn't dry properly, and keep the trichome head, which is still intact and still probably doing wonderful, right? So the major thing I'm doing in this first step is just creating keef, right? And keef
Yep,
is,
yep.
I don't want to call it hash. Keef is just a dirty, loose collection of trichome heads that have probably a lot of contamination mixed in, right? You
Yeah.
can use a tumbler, and I have used a tumbler in the past. I'm not really a fan of them. I keep having this love-hate relationship where I'll go back and try to use them, and then they just don't work the way I want them to, so I'll get rid of them. And then, I'll get tired of doing everything by hand and think, well, maybe it'll work this time. And maybe one of these days I'll either get tired enough of doing it by hand, but I found that at least from my perspective, I'm getting at least double yield of hand keefing versus tumbling. But to each their own, right? If you're not going to do it or you can't do it by hand and you do have a tumbler, that's a great way to make keef as well. You're looking at a screen that's roughly 250 microns. It's about what the size you want, and you're just grabbing like large handfuls of that material, and I'm just grinding it against itself in this, right? So I figure a head can't scratch a head like a diamond can't scratch a diamond, right? And they'll probably be fine. I'm not grinding it into my hand. I'm just grinding it against itself and letting it fall out. And I'm just using my glove as kind of like a window into what's happening. I can see
Yeah,
that
yeah.
there's a lot collecting up on my glove, right? And then as I
At
keep,
first.
yeah, and as I keep working that material, it gets less and less. And when it gets enough that I think that there's not much sticking, then that's probably means there's not many heads left in that material. I brush it off to the side, right? And then grab a new piece and repeat, right? And whether you have, 30 grams or 300 grams, it's the exact same motions. It's just how many times you do them,
Yeah, yeah.
right? And that's all you're doing is just grinding it against itself loosely, letting it fall down onto the screen. You don't want to grind it into the screen or grind over the screen. That's the screen is for classifying the material. It's not for doing the separation, at least in that first stage. So you don't know what's in the trim. Maybe a piece of metal or something has fallen in there, and then you're going to be going back over it and ripping your screen up. Even stalks, they
Even
can
that
be.
little tidbit of a tip right there, because like I've done that where I'm grinding my trim into the screen on my trim bin. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, you
No,
kind of just
no.
want like the dropping action as well is a
Yeah.
great thing to knock heads off. So I'm doing it above the screen and letting it fall down onto the screen, and then I'm just picking it back up again. And that movement of picking it up gently, like I'm not grinding it in the screen, I'm kind of almost lifting it up as I pull to get it
I
into a
see.
pile, just gently, and then dropping it back down and
Again, it
collecting it
looks like
back up.
you're like making it's dough, man. You're like sprinkling a little more flour on top, making sure it's not sticking. No, it's just watching skilled hands is an art.
Yeah.
But I want to also just like we had someone bring up. Of course, it's Kush Cat. You know, he mentions dry sift and static tech can turn boof into gold. That's exactly what we're doing here. We're taking, like you said, over dried, maybe like not the best material to smoke, and those trichomes are still amazing, intact. They have an oil gland, right? Like so, they're not dried out themselves. Maybe that just the material is. So we want to use our alchemy skills to turn boof into that succulent, delicious gingerbread looking temple ball that we saw earlier. I mean, it's just incredible, man.
Yeah, I do want to say make I guess mention to the fact that you do want it dry, but you don't want it old, right?
Gotcha.
So you can't really like me as an extractor, I'm not adding anything. I'm taking things away, right, in order to give it the best showcase. But I can't up the quality of something. If it's a 4 out of 10, in terpenes, it's always going to be a 4 out of 10 in terpenes. I won't be able to
For
add
sure.
anything more to it, right? So if you start with really crappy tasting, old, not grown well flour, you're going to end up with really crappy tasting, old, not tasting great hash, right? But if
Okay.
you have a nice, well grown product from a garden, of somebody who's grown it with intention and they know what they're doing, they're not spraying things on their plants, right? Because that's probably not a great idea to do if you're then going to collect those heads and make it say 10 to 1 or 15 to 1 concentration, right? And so yeah, you do want to make sure that you're not using like hot garbage, right? Or thinking that this is gonna
Yeah.
get rid of mold problems, or other issues that you had with your plant. But yeah, generally speaking, something that doesn't look very well in the bag might come out a lot better um, from this process, right? You can clean and take a lot of things out that you don't want there, but you want to make sure that you're not trying to use it to hide problems that might have been with the plant or smoke something that normally you wouldn't have smoked because it just probably wasn't a good or healthy idea to do that.
Gotcha.
So this dried material that we're using, if we're going in with a plant and we are intending to use this for dry sift, can we just like dry the hell out of it super fast, just like rock through a dry in 3 days? Or are we still looking for that like 10, 14, 16 day dry period? Like, does that matter?
See, I'm not I'm not as strong on the growing side of things as I am on the hash making side of things. But I would say if you're violently trying to dry something, you're probably not doing a lot of good things to your heads as well. So if you're subjecting them to a high amount of heat, right? I would say maybe if you're drying them faster because you've dropped the humidity in your room
Mm-hmm.
versus up the heat, right? Um, but I don't think like blasting them with a high pressure air fan to try to dry them
We're
faster
not like
or
putting them in the oven after we
yeah,
get
yeah, that's
yeah,
probably
this
not
will,
a good
dude,
idea.
we'll be able to smoke a bowl in an hour.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, right? Because again, we're only dealing with what we're given, right? We can't make it
Yeah.
better. But yeah, I would say that you're probably okay to drop your humidity and maybe at least dry it more in the same amount of time because like you're looking at what 62, 64, something like that
Yeah, right
for
around
Yeah,
buds,
that's
63.
right
that's what
around
we
for like
target as smokers. Yeah.
right. So you could in the same 10-day period or 6 or 8 or whatever your thing is, drop your humidity down to 20 or 30% and get that bud to 40, right?
All right, word. Yeah, we want it. So we want it pretty low, man. Not
Yeah, like the drier the
this
better.
is
It's just going to be
dry. Yeah.
easier for you, right? Because you don't want you know that weed where you don't need scissors and you can just kind of crumble it and it like would almost turn to something that might be
Yeah,
a
like
little
a
too fine to
dust.
smoke. Yeah, maybe not like a full powder, but like would just crumble up into like crunchy little pieces. That's what you're kind of looking for if you're going to do some buds. Is
Okay.
that would be the
Awesome.
easiest way, because the drier it is, the easier it is to break up, and the more you're going to open that plant up and get those inside buds or those inside heads exposed, so that you can then knock them off the plant material and get them through that first screen.
Awesome. So
Awesome.
we've gotten them through the first screen in this video now. The step
And
Yeah,
two.
remind us the micron size of that screen again, if you don't mind.
250. It's
250.
60
Gotcha.
LPI, which is lines per inch, which is what most screens come in because it's a fabric. So it's telling you how many lines of fabric are in 1 inch, right? So the higher number that you get in LPI, the smaller the hole because you have more. It's kind of like thread count. It's the same idea.
Mm, yeah.
So like the higher number you have, the more threads you have, and the smaller the holes in between them. So my screens are 61 LPI, which is around 250 micron.
Awesome.
That's cool.
So
So
now,
So soft.
you're using like a paintbrush, I see.
yeah, so we're on to the second phase now. So now that we've created our keef, now we kind of have to mechanically separate the heads from the stock if they're still stuck there, and further classify the material. So what I'm doing here, I have the next size screen down, which it's 86 LPI or somewhere around, I want to say about 190 micron, and I'm just brushing that back and forth, and that's going to allow everything that will fit through the hole to get through the hole. Like I'm dragging it, as you can see, because I'm getting kind of like a rolling action on the front end, and as that tumbles in front of that brush, think about the heads like a lollipop, right? You're either going to get the head to go through, and as the pile keeps going, it's going to snap that head from that stalk, or you're going to
Uh
get the
huh.
stalk to fall through first, and then the head is going to want to keep moving and snap the head from the stalk. And then it's also going to allow things to be oriented in different ways in order to fall through, because just like a lollipop wouldn't fall through like say like a sewer grate if it were sideways, if
Yeah.
you lifted it up right and oriented it the right way, it would slide through. So you're just allowing that material to be oriented properly, to use the mechanical action of the screen to fall through that, and classify things by size. So usually anything over that 190 micron is probably not going to be what you want. It's either going to be a head with a stalk that just won't come off, or it's going to be a piece of, you know,
A plant
plant
material or
material, or a
a hair.
hair, or yeah, lots of different
Dust.
things, right? Yeah. So that's all
A
I'm doing, is I'm just
scab that fell off your face or
Oh my
something.
sure,
Some
god,
yeah,
kind of.
Cal.
hopefully not, but and I should have mentioned this a while ago. Safety is really important to me when you're doing these extractions. Protect yourself, because for a lot of people it's a medicine, and there's no point in getting sick trying to make it. This process is dusty.
Oh,
You
for
really
sure.
want to make sure that you're wearing a mask, at least N95, which is those paper dust masks with the little metal pinch on the nose. Um, and I fully recommend like a half face respirator with P100 filters. And if you can get them, organic vapor cartridges, because terpenes themselves are actually corrosive. And there's a lot of guys who have been washing for a while. When you concentrate those and then put your head, say, over top of the bucket that you're washing in, now you're breathing those in a highly concentrated amount, and that's not good for your lungs, right? Same with this. You want to protect yourself. So if you are going to sift, either, I don't know if you could do it outside or in a well ventilated area, but definitely protect yourself from the dust and get at least an N95 mask, if not better.
Wow. I assume that you
Yep.
can do
PPE.
the like the sifting part, turning the stuff into keef, kind of anywhere. Is there an environment that you need to do these next steps in? Do you have to be like freezing your ass off in a deep freezer like you have to do with making
Um,
other types of hash, or do you have to be in a tent, or can I like do it in my living room?
Well, okay, so a little bit to unpack there. You definitely don't want it freezing, because we get into it later about how static charges work, but cold is not a great thing. You do, however, have to fight the head wanting to melt. So depending on the type of resin head you might have a window of, same with the dough, where it's sticky, but if you get to the right temperature, it's not. So there's different heads that will react differently to temperature, and you can be in a window that allows you to work with that material without having it gum up. Some stuff you can get away with, say, 75, maybe even 80 degrees. Other stuff you might want to be 55, 60 degrees. Um, Getting below 55 degrees, though, will cause problems that we can talk about later. And then, generally speaking, you do want a drier room. So, because you're going to be doing this in conjunction with the next steps, trying to keep that humidity under 55 for sure, and more like in the 50s to 40s would be a good range. So if you can, usually like any air conditioning unit can get you around 60 to 61 degrees and bring your humidity down below 55 in most environments. That's going to be enough for you to be able to do this process for
Cool.
most. And it's a tool. Again, it may not work for some, or it may be that some strains don't work for your environment. That's fine. Just like washing, some things will and won't work, right? But it's just another system that you can use, and it's actually a little bit more forgiving than washing because you don't need those freezing cold temperatures, which are kind of hard to achieve sometimes for some people.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, you're just looking for on the drier side and on the cooler side, but you're not looking for like a freezer or a cold room. Anything in the 50s to 60s, mid 60s is like beautiful window, and under 55 RH you'll probably be fine.
Lovely. That sounds much more comfortable.
Yeah, yeah, it is. I wear a t-shirt most times and flip flops, right? So I do make fun of those guys that wash and call them like, wet socks and, frozen hands and, whatever I can to try to get them to come over to my side.
All the cute little polar bears
Before
playing in the ice.
before we move on to step 3, I want to ask you about this little thing you mentioned that says never stop or start moving your hand while it's touching the screen, or else you'll pick up contamination.
Okay, so that's in conjunction with me saying that you could probably do some static tech on this screen when you've brushed everything through. So
Gotcha, gotcha,
when
gotcha.
this process is done, and see how there's like a bunch above my brush there,
I do.
I'm just going to continue brushing until I've worked all that material through the screen, and what's not going to go is not going to go. Then
Okay.
what I'll do is spread it out and then do the static, which you'll see in the next step.
All
But
right.
that's
All
just
right.
one of the static tenets of how that works. So I can explain it
Awesome.
in the next step, and then it'll make sense for doing it on this part here.
Cool. Now we're back on. We're on another screen now. We're on the one that's
Yes,
underneath.
that's
Okay.
correct. So
And
we're
that's
on my screens. They're 230 LPI, which is about 65 micron. Most screens you're going to buy, they look yellow and they're 200. I don't know who picked that number or why, and they ended up being about 73 to 75 micron. Both are fine. I just went
okay.
with a different manufacturer of screens, and that's the model or the size that they use. And it's not a typical size, but it doesn't mean that you have to use that one. So all I'm doing in this is I'm doing the same thing again. I'm just spreading it out and then brushing it in at the corner, and that's allowing anything that I don't want because it's smaller than my target range to fall through the screen. So because I'm at 65, and that's a lot of problem with dry sift, is that people use a tumbler and they tumble or their trim bin or whatever, and they call that dry sift when it's really keef, and they haven't taken the bottom end out, and that's where a lot of the contamination is, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you wouldn't wash water hash, put it through a 220 screen or a 190, and then collect everything from the bottom and call it hash, right? You want to take that bottom end out because anything below probably 45 microns and most likely somewhere in the 60s is either going to be a broken head, an immature head, stock, or other plant material or dirt or different things. So you want to really do this step. And if you don't do anything else besides this and you don't use static, this is a fairly okay hash. It would be like more of a traditional hash that would burn, give you an ember for like, use with apples, or if you want to put, the pin and smoke it under glass or whatever other method that you might have for smoking. This would be what a lot of people would recognize as quote unquote traditional hash. what's coming off the top of the screen without any further refinement. But if you're looking to, and it makes sense to, further refine it, you can absolutely do that with static. So yeah, this is all I'm doing in this is just making sure that I give every bit of material a chance to go over that screen
Yeah.
and drop through so I can get some of that bottom end out of the product and further refine it to a um, slightly cleaner state than it was before. And it's
Man,
less material for me to have to static. So it's less work for me to do, right?
for sure, for sure. I love how you put that. Take the bottom end out. You know, that makes sense to me. I'm like a musically inclined. You know, like too much low end would be muddy. You know, not clear, not enough refined sound. You know, we don't want those like 20 hertz. We got to take the 60 hertz out. Usually a hum right around 75 or something like that. Not good. But that's not something I really even thought of when making hash. Like, it just seemed to me like people were going down in their micron sizes as they worked through their bags or their screens. But we're not doing that here. You're going from like I forget what the first screen was. If you could
250,
remind me, 250 to
about 190.
190. Then we were at 65. You said
Yeah, and that's the last one that I use.
that's right here.
Correct.
And so like, and on this screen, we want the stuff that's staying on top.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, cool, cool, cool. I'm just trying to wrap my head around all this, man. You know, it's thank you for making me feel
What's
confident in what I'm looking at here.
No problem.
what's the time investment in something for that like this? Going from if you're gonna do one thing of trim from beginning to end.
Okay, I guess so.
We'll go back.
You're kind of held to the amount that you're doing because time and amount are tied together with this. With water
Hmm.
hash, you're tied to the system. So if you're washing and you're doing 5 washes at 15 minutes each, right, plus a pre-soak, your time is going to be set. And if you use a 5 gallon or a 20 gallon or a 50 gallon or a 500 gallon, the time is still going to be the same, but your amounts going through are different. But with this dry sifting, because you're doing it all by hand and you have to run through every bit of product, right? Then the more you do, the longer it's going to take you. I think if, let's say on the hand keeping side, if somebody could do a pound an hour, they're probably doing all right for themselves. They could get a lot quicker, but that wouldn't be a bad speed to be able to hit. So, I mean, I've far exceeded that by sometimes 2 to 3. Some stuff runs a lot faster than others, and I have a lot of experience. But yeah, if you're in the say half pound in a half hour, right? And I don't think there's a lot of people out there that would have more than a half pound or a pound of trim from their home garden,
No, not many.
or of material that they kind of want to make into hash, then that itself is probably about a half hour commitment just to keep it out, and then maybe depending on what you're dealing with, maybe another 10 minutes or 15 minutes of brushing. If you come out of this and you're doing say an ounce an hour, um, total, like from start to refined hash at the end, and you're hitting somewhere in between say 20 to 40 grams an hour, you're doing amazing, right? And if you're above that, it's probably due to yields and a few other things. There's some stuff that you just will never get more than say
Gotcha.
20 or 25 grams an hour, but it's good enough for the home grower that if you want to say make a little bit for the weekend, like it's not like a big process. You can stop, you can come back to it later, like the wife calls you and says, hey, you forgot you need to take me to go get groceries or something, or we have these plans. You can just drop it. You're not tied
I
to it
love
like
that.
water hash where you have to you've committed yourself to this process, and if you don't finish it there's going to be issues. You can just pause, walk away, come back in 5 minutes, 30 minutes, 2 hours. As long as your environment stays nice, then there's not a lot of issues with with that. But you could easily make what you're going to smoke for the week in say 30 minutes to an hour once a week, right? If or less, right?
It's great. It's like
Um,
meal prepping,
Wow.
but
yeah,
you're
exactly, right?
hash prepping.
So
Yeah,
fast.
you find out that buddy is going to be in town, and you want to have the sesh and you don't have anything good. It's not like water hash where, oh crap, I need at least 3 to 5 days in
Man,
order to
this
wash
is
it and dry it
honestly
and prep it, and yeah.
so cool. This is so cool. This appeals to every sensibility of like me as a tent pirate. I
Yeah,
have
and
so
it's
much trim. I want something to do with it. You know what I mean? And it's just never refined enough. And yeah, this. So please, let's say your wife called you at this stage in the process and wanted you to go take her to the grocery store. Would you just put like a piece of parchment paper over, like
it
plastic
depends.
wrap, or
My
what?
my tent is, I do this in a 4x8 grow tent. Um, I have um, I have a carbon filter on the intake. I also have a carbon filter fan blowing out to kind of kill the smell. So I would just leave it and walk away. But yeah, if you are worried about it, you could put parchment, or you could even put another screen on top of it, or a smaller screen if you had that on top of that to keep things from falling into it. Yeah, there's just,
True, true.
kind of depends on
Lots of
what you're dealing
options.
with, your environment, right? But the great thing about it is, if you do get some dirt in there, it's not really going to be a problem, because, as we'll come to find out later, we have a way of targeting what we want and leaving what we don't, right? So, not to say make a mess, but just to say
Yeah.
we're not tied to it like the guys that are washing, because the way that they're classifying is just by size. So if you make a piece of
Mm.
contamination that is 73 microns, it will be in your 73 micron bag, and there's
Oh my
nothing that you
God.
can do about it. There's no way to get it out, right?
The
But with
73
this,
micron scab is in your hash.
exactly. But with this, we're working with a different metric, right? Which allows us to target things not by size, but by different properties that they have, so that we can either collect to discard, or collect to retain what we want.
That's that's actually it's genius. It really is. Um, and now that I'm thinking about it too, it's like people say solventless, right? As they when they talk about uh, water hash, typically, right? Because we see solvents as like an alcohol, and
Yeah,
so
or
solvent,
hydrocarbon,
yeah,
right?
hydrocarbon, right? But solventless is made with water. But isn't water nature's greatest solvent? Aren't we not like? Isn't there some like dissolving of the trichomes, or some loss to the water
I
as a
mean,
solvent?
we could get into this and probably go to episode 225 talking about it. But to
So
give you
like
a short kind
you're
of
losing
brief history
terps
of
to
it.
the water. I mean, smell your hash water. It's got all the terps in there.
Yeah, so there is probably something you're losing to it. What they say is water hash is solventless because they're using the water as the mechanical separator and not as a solvent to dissolve what they're looking to extract, like they would with a hydrocarbon, right? So that's where they
I
say it's
gotcha,
solventless. But
but no,
it
this is
was
real solventless.
that's yeah, it's another version. I don't want hate emails. It's another version of solventless.
Hey,
You'll,
But
you
we will
send them to
get them.
me. You can send your
yeah,
hate emails to me. I said it. I mean, seriously, man, no, you're not losing anything here. This is like, you are not washing the trichome in any capacity. You're not losing anything here, to my mind.
well, to play
So,
devil's advocate to the process that I love so much, you do have to dry it, which with some hash, if you're washing it live, you haven't. So then maybe there's something to be said about, well, how much are you losing to the water versus how much are you losing to the drying process, and which one is more, right? So there are
fair.
pros and cons, right? They're all just tools in which to extract, and it's up to the person. Maybe washing it loses that one beautiful terp that you were smelling in the flower that doesn't show up in the extract, and this is a way to get it out. Or maybe drying it is losing the terpene that you were smelling, right? And now you have to keep it frozen and figure out a live way to wash or to extract that so that you're not losing that terpene, right? So it's all about just
Tool in the toolbox.
one tool in the toolbox, and it works well for some things and not for others, and it's really up to your preference as to what you're looking for in flavor, in effect, in consistency, in ease of use, in what you yourself can afford to do and what your environment can let you do, right?
Here, here.
Yeah. Hey, amen. Amen. Let's get to the step everyone wants to see, the static tech itself, right? So this is where we really refine our product, where the
Correct.
magic happens.
Yeah.
All right.
So essentially, what we're doing is we're just using um, the affinity of certain things to want to be positively or negatively charged or neutral charged, just like a magnet, where if you have a magnet and you try to put the same ends together, they repel each other. The opposite ends together will stick to each other, as well as you can take a magnet and stick it to, say, steel, and it'll pick it up. But you try to stick it to wood, and it won't pick it up, right? So we're just using these ideas of
Wow.
positive charges, like repelling, attracting, and then there's another little part in there that's called polarization, which when we're talking about charges and something being charged, it means it's either taking electrons in or giving electrons out, right? And if it's a neutral, those electrons are kind of balanced in imbalance, right? And an imbalance in electrons, either less or more, gives you a positive or a negative charge. But with polarization, you can still get attraction without having to actually lose or gain electrons. And what you're doing is kind of like, do you ever do that experiment where you have oil on the top of water with food coloring and you drop the soap in and it pushes the oil away?
I've seen it. Yes.
Say, well, that's polarization. So what's going to happen is if you have a really strong charge, uh, the electrons aren't going to leave the glove, right, or leave the material or get drawn into the material, but they will move around the surface of material and create wells that will then be the other charge, right?
Okay.
So, yeah, all we're doing here is we know that certain materials like to be at certain charges, and that's called triboelectrics. And if you look up a triboelectric chart, it's just a list of materials that like to be positive and like to be negative. And if something is on one side of it or further up the chart and something is further down the chart, then that means that they have more affinity to be trading electrons. And if they're closer together, they have less. If something two things are on the positive side of that chart, but one is really positive and the other one isn't, it's just like kind of just above a neutral, then probably it will end up taking electrons from the thing that wants to give them more, right? But we won't bog down in too much of the science there. But if people do want to look into it, it's mostly triboelectrics is what we're dealing with.
Cool.
So
Oh, it's just like a
we
natural. Yeah. No, it's just a
yeah,
physics basically.
yeah, just like you rub a balloon on your hair, right? And then your hair wants to stick to the balloon, but the balloon won't stick to your face, right? Different things have
Ah.
different charges, right? And want to either stick or don't stick. So all we're doing here is we know that the material of the screen is the nylon, and that's what you're kind of looking Taclon, nylon, something along those lines. That usually matches the charge of the head. So your screen isn't going to want to be pulling the heads into it, and they don't want to stick to that screen, right?
Okay.
The glove itself is a neutral or near neutral. And that's why I wanted to make sure that I told you earlier it was
Uh huh.
nitrile, because nitrile is a very near neutral product, right? So when you're dealing with this polarization, the heads are going to want to jump and stick to that because they're pushing those electrons out of the way in order to, or drawing them into little wells so it'll stick to the glove. But the glove doesn't have the charge. The heads are the what's charged, and brushing them around like that and doing what you're doing has built up a charge. And you'll see it as you're brushing around. They'll jump on the screen, kind of like you'll brush a pile and then part of the pile will jump away from it and it'll show you that you're kind of building a charge, and that's one of the ways to kind of tell if you don't have some fancy equipment to actually measure charges on things. um, and then all I'm doing is I'm just rubbing the glove over top of those heads, and they're sticking to the glove. They're jumping off the screen
They're
and sticking to the
jumping
glove. But
like a Mexican jumping trichomes.
yeah, and they're following the trailing edge of my hand as it goes over. They're kind of sticking themselves, hitching themselves to the wagon as it goes by, right? But the plant material and the stalks, they're a neutral. So when you have a neutral of a glove and a neutral of another material, they do not want to stick together, right? So then they won't come off the screen. So I can target just the heads using nitrile and the heads themselves, right? And the thoughts of polarization to be able to pull them off the screen. If the glove were charged the other way, it might want to attract things, and we don't want that, right? So that's all it
So
is.
we don't. You didn't do anything special necessarily to make this happen. We're just using natural, like these things want to attract to one another. I mean, like you showed the temperature and the humidity. I see it's 60 degrees Fahrenheit, 48% humidity.
Yeah, anything below 55 is good. The problem you get into is once you start to approach 60, you get issues because once you get to, I think it's close to 80 in RH, there's so much water in the air that any charge that you build up is grounded. It dissipates into the air because the water is able to ground that charge to the ground, right? So this will not work in 80% humidity. You can rub it all you want, you will not get the charge because as you build that charge up, that charge is now dissipating into the air, right? So you want to be below 55 and ideally 50, and then you'll have enough dryness in that air to allow these heads to hold their charge long enough for you to do this. So as you're brushing them around, they're getting kind of charged up. And then as you're rubbing your hand over, the static is able to work. But if it hasn't worked for somebody in the past, it's possible that you were too high of humidity in your room and you just couldn't build and sustain a static charge strong enough in order to be able to have it stick. The other key thing to think about is your temperature, because if something is frozen, it has no charge because freezing stops the movement, right? Just like it keeps your food from rotting and everything else, it stops the movements of electrons. So if you were to charge something up and freeze it, it would have zero charge if you measured it frozen, and then you rewarm it back up, it would come back up to the charge that you had. But because the freezing of it prevents the activity from happening, then essentially it doesn't have a charge, right? So if you earlier, we were talking about temperature too cold, like a freezing room. It doesn't matter what the humidity is. We don't have enough temperature to allow that charge to happen, right? Same idea as when you're kind of outside in the middle of winter and you take your toque off, nothing happens. But you come into a warm environment and you take that toque off in dry air, in a warm temperature, and your hair now stands up because the static charge that was built up by taking your hat off on your hair was able to not be dissipated in the air. Whereas in the summer, if you were to do the same thing, nothing would happen because probably it's a little bit more humid, right? So that's the same idea is you need that kind of window of warm enough to allow the charge to happen, but cool enough to not have the heads melting and dry enough in order to be able to sustain a charge. And if you get that little triangle, then this will work perfectly.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
That's so
crazy.
amazing.
Like I love it.
When you're
What's up,
moving your
Sonoma?
hand,
Hey, Sonoma, how's
He
it going?
says you're the
Sonoma.
hash rookie is the Bill Nye of static and resin.
I love
That's
him.
kind of what I feel like. We're listening to yeah, the science guy explain hash to us, man. This is awesome. Like a childhood dream come true.
Yeah, Woody was also on Homegrown Hashishin, which is actually where I heard him for the first time after seeing these types of pictures. So, you guys should check that episode out as well. And I mean all of their other episodes too, because they're amazing. So, hi Sonoma.
Oh yeah, if you're a hash head, get your ass over there.
So much
Homegrown
knowledge.
Hashishin podcast.
Yep, incredible. Highly recommended. Okay, so I,
Yeah,
anyway,
man.
I was going to say, when you're moving your hand over the tops of everything that's spread out on your screen, are you physically touching them or are you kind of like hovering right over them?
No, so what you want to do is you want to spread it out thin, and depending on a few different factors, you can get it a little thicker. Some things don't like much buildup, like they don't like a thick spread. They want it like really, really thin. And other stuff you can get away with it being a little thicker. That's one of those metrics that goes into how quickly you can do this process, depending on kind of how it likes to pull. But you do want it fairly thin, and you're going to use the weight of your hand. You're not going to push down on the screen, and you're not going to lift up. You want just that weight, right? And you want to use a glove that has zero wrinkles in it whatsoever, because those wrinkles are going to cause you problems, right? So you
A
want a nice
tight
tight
glove.
tight fitting. I use a medium gauntlet 6 mil um, grease monkey glove.
Nitrile.
Yeah, and it's grease monkey, but I had to go through about 6 or 8 different brands of gloves and sizes of gloves to find what fits my hand,
Oh,
because some
interesting.
stuff is too loose, some stuff is too tight. The other thing you don't want is a wet hand or a clammy hand, because
Yeah.
that glove, you don't want powder inside of it, right? But because that's just going to create contamination. But what you want is that glove to slide on smoothly and be tight fitting. If it's too tight, or if your hand's too wet, you're going to be pulling on it, and that working, like that bottom, your palm is your working surface, right? So if you're ripping on the palm to pull it down, you're going to stretch it out, and then you're going to create wrinkles, right? So you really want a nice dry hand. I usually put my hand in front of my AC unit and just let it dry out for maybe 15 or 30 seconds, and then it'll slide right on. I can't tell you the hours I spent fighting with gloves when I first started before I realized, like, oh, dry my hand off, get it cool, it'll slide right on, right? If you're finding that, let's say you're on the more petite side of a hand and you can't find a glove that fits you well and they're all loose, you can use like those knitted 5 finger, like dollar store, one size fits all kind of gloves, like the kids' gloves or whatever, and
Hmm.
put that on and then slide the glove over top. It doesn't matter that it's touching your hand, it matters that it's tight, right? So
Yeah.
that's also something that works, and that's going to help insulate the material from the heat of your hand, especially if you're one of those like hot handed people. And that might actually help you a little bit as well. So there's a few tricks that you can do in order to kind of fill out that space, but you want a nice tight glove that's made of nitrile, um, in order to do this. And you will probably end up going through some gloves in this process, depending on the heads and how they're reacting. I've had some gloves last me for an hour, and they were still fine. I've had other gloves, you'll start to grow what look like kind of warts, but it's just hash building up from the oils,
Ah.
right? And once they start to grow, you can clean the glove off a little bit, but after a while, it's just a losing process, and you kind of have to ditch the glove and get a new one. You could, if you wanted, spray it with ISO and wipe it down and dry it, and then brush the glove off to make sure you don't have any like particulate from whatever you dried it with. I'm a little nervous about using ISO around resin heads, because if it's floating in the air and it gets on there, it creates some problems. But I would say be a mindful global citizen. Don't create more garbage than you need to. We're already in an industry that uses a lot of resources to create the plant. It uses a lot of water, a lot of nutrients, a lot of power, right? Um, Use the gloves for something else. We do other cleaning tasks within the tent that you can then save those gloves to use, and you're not getting a fresh pair when you're doing that. If you have a dog and it's time to go clean the lawn off from all their little surprises, now you have a glove that you don't need to get a new glove to do that. You know what I mean? So find other ways
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
use these more than once, so that you're not just creating a pile of garbage trying to make what you call, a nice, clean, medicine. And there may be some stuff that I've had one Congo that I ran. The glove only worked once, right? For whatever reason, there was some weird electrical polarization stuff going on. I could get the fattest pull, like that glove would have been almost full, and you'd almost not see my hand, and then it would not pull another head off the screen, and that was it. So there was a point where I just said, even though this is an amazing product, I don't really want to be running this all the time, because then that means that I'm just going to be going through like a pack of gloves a day, and I just didn't really feel comfortable
Hmm.
doing that,
Gotcha.
right? So there's a
Glove
time in,
heavy.
again, if that's the only medicine that does what you need it to do and there's no other way to get it, then that's something to take into effect, right? But these guys that I see, and I won't say exactly who they are, but I've literally seen them. They use a glove once, they peel it off, they put a new glove on, and it's like a commercial operation. And it's like, I mean, that's great, but I'd hate to see your trash bin at the end of the day,
Yeah.
because it's going to
Oh
be
my
full of
gosh.
nitrile gloves that didn't need to be used, right? So just be mindful of the mess you're making and the garbage that you're creating, and we're not going to be at zero, but if we can at least try to smartly use and limit what we're doing, right? Maybe you find that if you drop it by another 5 degrees, then it works well, right? And it doesn't get those little hash buildups, right? Or maybe you have to go thinner, or you know something. But just
Yeah,
try
less
to be mindful. Yeah,
pressure
try to be
maybe
mindful.
on the
Yeah,
screen
whatever it is,
itself.
just try to be mindful of what you're doing, and just realize that we don't need to be making more and more garbage, right? For trying to do these little hobbies or whatever we want to do.
Agree, man. Agree. So I guess we're not seeing it in the video here, but at this point, once you have these trichome heads all attached to this glove, because they just naturally want to attract.
Then what?
Amazing physics. Then we're wiping them off with that brush right into like a bowl.
Yeah, so we have two brushes. One is a natural fiber brush, and one is a nylon brush, right? So in the earlier photos that you saw, I was using a natural fiber brush. Um, and
Okay.
then the next brush that I have is a nylon brush, which is the same as the material. So it should repel the heads, right? The head shouldn't want to stick to that brush, which is a good
Gotcha.
thing to have, right? So all I'm doing is I'm putting my hand over a bowl or another collection device, parchment, whatever you have, and I'm just gently brushing that glove off into the bowl. Now, you may notice that the inside of your fingers, like right down the middle, and the inside of your palm kind of looks like there might be some contamination built up there. There may be what you see as straight lines. Straight lines are not a good thing with hash because it means it's a stock, right? We want nice little round dots. So if you're noticing that you're getting like a buildup, and that's probably just due to polarization. The stronger you make that charge around the outside of those fingers, right, the more you're going to have a charge on the middle of your fingers in the middle of your palm, and it'll kind of build up after a while. You can most certainly just brush what you can get at, and then put the rest back in the pile and just keep working it out. So like the first
Okay.
couple pulls will probably be great, but as you get more into more contamination and less heads to be picked up, you might end up pulling a little more dirty, and there's no reason to put that into your clean hash. You can just brush it back into the pile, and then keep going, right? And all I'm doing is I'm doing this right hand, left hand motion, kind of like wax on, wax off.
Yeah.
Um, I'm never stopping my hand on the screen. I'm lifting it up before I rotate and do the other side. So I'm starting to spin before I put it down.
Hmm.
I'm doing my right, like clockwise circles. Then I'm picking my hand up and I'm putting it back down as I'm starting my left hand circles, because the wind is another action that we're using, right? Think about the heads as little golf balls, and then all the plant matter as little sails, right? So as I'm using that wind, I'm going around. Anything that doesn't have a strong retraction in my glove is going to get blown off, right? It's not going to be able to stick, right? Same idea as, you ever have like 8 or 12 or 15 different nails stuck to a magnet? The nail at the very bottom is kind of stuck there, but if you shake it a little bit, it falls off, right? So if you have this slight attraction, and I said the glove was a near neutral, not a neutral, so there may be some slight attraction to the plant material, but it's not going to be very much, and it won't be able to stand up to that constant movement. But if you stop your hand, right, then one, that's going to allow some of that stuff maybe to jump on, and two, it's kind of like a stampede where if you're moving, you're kind of picking it up as you go, but it's going pretty quick. But if you were to just let it rest, then all of those heads might try to rush onto that glove at once, bringing with them whatever else was in and around them, and now they're stuck in layers underneath those, as they, just like everyone
Mm.
trying to go to the exit at the same time. If you don't want to go to the exit, too bad. If there's 200 or 300 people all rushing in one direction, you're kind of stuck going in that direction with them, right? So that's what we want to make sure, is that we're constantly moving our hand while we're on the screen, right? And if you mess up and you like, go one way, go the other, or you stop, just brush your hand off onto the screen,
I'm gonna start
spread
again.
it out, and try again. It's really forgiving of a process, right? It's not like water hash, where if you make a mistake and you put the wrong thing into the wrong thing, there can be maybe no way to get out of that, right? Um, this is really, really great for beginners and people learning. because you're able to leave it, come back, go look things up if you want, take a break. You can make a mistake and then just put it back on the screen and keep going, right? You haven't done anything wrong. You've just forced yourself to maybe work a little longer to achieve the same thing. So now that we've gotten that kind of process over with of the collection, you may have a really clean collection, and you may have not a clean collection. There may be, for some reason, um, it's just not as clean as you want it to be. There's a couple steps that you can do before this final process of cleaning it out, um, that you can do to kind of get a further refinement. Not all resin is going to want to do that, in a sense of, 6-star resin is grown as 6-star resin, or like super high quality, super melt resin is going to be super melt resin from the garden. And other stuff just isn't going to be that. And it may be that you're trying to get more quality out of it than what you started with, and you'll never get to there. So it may be that that's just as clean as it's going to get, right? Or as clean as you want to get it, because further ref isn't going to make it that much more special, and you're just going to lose more material in the process of trying to do that. Um, but if you are looking to try to clean it up a little more, there's a few things that you could do. You can, once it's off the screens, you can clean all your screens off. You just dry brush them, get all the material kind of that's stuck to them off of them, and then just drop it back through the screens. As we said before, those screens are going to want to repel heads. But the other thing they do, and you'll
Mm.
notice this when you're trying to clean the screen, is that they will attract the contamination. And it's really hard to brush it off. It's like when you get that like piece of cellophane stuck to your finger, or sorry, the piece of like that, CD case or whatever that thin clear plastic is, and you're like shaking your hand trying to get it off, and it's just
Yeah.
jumping to different. Yeah, same idea,
Or-
right?
or-
And- yeah,
Get
exactly.
in the
and
trash
and
can. Just get it.
it can be really hard to get
Yeah.
that, get some of the contamination off the screen because it just wants to stick there. Well, use that to your advantage. Drop it back through any contamination. It's going to act as a well, and it's going to collect that as it drops through all those screens, right? And then you just brush it back up, and anything that's stuck to the screen is probably not something you want, and anything that you're brushing away is probably something that you do want. Another thing you can do is you can use your nylon brush, and you spread some of that material out on the screen, and you just brush it back and forth. And then you tap your brush gently. And if you look at it under a microscope, and that's probably a good tool to have if you're making hash, because we can't see that small definition. But once you get a scope, you can kind of get down to the level of the heads and really understand what's going on at that level. So you could look at your brush under a microscope, and sadly, on my old Instagram, I had the side by side and different pictures of this. The brush will attract contamination because it's nylon. So you can brush the contamination out of the heads by doing that. So you just brush them gently back and forth, make sure you get good contact on a lot of the bristles, and then you give it a gentle tap like you're ashing a joint, like not hard, but just gentle, and you'll notice a little puff come. And that's all those heads that aren't very attracted to that nylon falling off. And then if you look at that, it's going to be all stock. So you can clean up. Let's say you want a couple grams from this run as something to like really show off, right? Or you're going to go to a competition and you have 10 grams that you need really clean. You don't need to do it to all of it, because you're probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 90% or higher clean if you've done this process well enough. But if you're really trying to get to that 99.9% heads, then these are some tricks you can do. Is drop it through the screens when they're nice and charged up, and that'll pull some contamination out. You can brush it out using your nylon brush, right? And then that can pull some contamination out of that material as well. Um, there's also Teflon Tech, which is PTFE. It's a type of plastic, and it has the same idea of charge, where it will repel the heads and attract contamination. So you can get a microfiber cloth, and you can brush this PTFE a little bit with it to kind of charge it up, and then hold it over top of the hash, very close, just hovering over it without touching it. And you can pull contamination out of the hash and up onto your PTFE, right? So triboelectric series, that series is a great thing to use, because now you can see oh, well, what's close to nylon? What's on the other side of it? And you can understand what all these materials charge affinities like to be and use that to your advantage to either pick materials for your lab that won't do what you don't want them to do, which is steal your heads, right? Or cause problems with the process, right? Like, oh, I want a neutral. Okay, well, let me look at the series and find things that are neutral and I'll use those, right? Like the brush handle is made of wood, which is not a conductor and it's usually a neutral. So that's going to allow things to happen. I do this on glass for certain reasons because that also helps to insulate charges. I do it in a tent. That helps to insulate charges. So all the materials that I've chosen for reasons, right? And some of them have been because I was smart and looked it up, and others because I was stupid and just did it, right? And then went, oh crap, this isn't working, right? Or was just lucky enough to pick something that worked well um, right off the hop. Like a metal bowl, those are conductive. Those will help to pull the charge out of your heads. Because if you keep these heads too charged for too long, that's almost like heating them, right? Because they have a lot of
Ah,
activity on them. So if you were to supercharge these heads and just continually leave them charged and charged without dissipating that charge, then you'd probably have an issue where you're degrading them because you're having a lot of activity, and activity like they don't care. New, everything moving around creates friction, and friction creates heat, right? So the stronger you charge these things, and the longer you keep them charged, the more you're going to have issues where you're degrading it because you're adding heat to that process, right? So yeah,
okay.
lots of little nuances to get into, but
Man,
generally
there's
speaking, if somebody watches those 4 or 5 videos, reads the description next to them, they probably will be able to have success their first time out doing this, right? If they pick the materials that I've said, they use the sizes and the type of screens that I've said, and they do the process as it's written and shown. They may not get the highest yield that they're capable of or the cleanest product, but they should have success in being able to at least get some sort of static refinement done from their dry sift.
This
love it.
is incredible. It seems so easy.
Well, so how do you take? I guess how do you take the product we ended step 5 with here, which is the super refined trichome heads.
Yeah.
After we've staticked, we've cleaned them further, and then how do we get to this, which is you pulling that taffy hash, man, that saltwater taffy hash.
Well, that's a rosin. So I made that by pressing it in a rosin press, right? So
Okay.
I took that hash. So I guess we'll step it up. So from from that stuff that you saw that I just got out of the bowl, right? That's super refined, just pure heads. If you were to put that in between parchment and hold that in your hand for say a minute or two and kind of squeeze with just the
Like,
pressure that you can use, yeah, just like that.
yeah.
Um, then you kind of take that and mold it around with your hand and roll it around into a ball, you'll get that temple ball that you saw
Ah,
earlier, right? Because most extracts, or at least most forms of hash, and I guess most extracts, are just heat, time, and pressure, right? That's all. It's a triangle of 3 things. So if you're looking at this rosin, right? This rosin was a high pressure because I used a hydraulic press, and a high heat because I used heated plates, right? And a low amount of time, say 2 to 3 minutes, right? And that will get me something that's called a rosin, right? A low amount of pressure, hand pressure, a low amount of heat, hand heat, right? And a low amount of time will get you, like the a temple ball, right? If you want to get into mechanical extractions, you can take rosin and use a low amount of heat and a low amount of pressure in a very long time, and that'll come out as mechanically separated THCA or diamonds, solventless diamonds. That's one way to make them, right?
ah,
Um,
okay.
yeah, you can take your rosin and you can heat that rosin with no pressure and a fair amount of time, and that turns it into jam, right? Or you can create what you need to make carts. So all extractions, right, and all these different forms that we're looking at, right, whether that's like a hash or a rosin or um, like a batter or diamonds or sauce or whatever it is. It's just heat, time, and pressure. And depending on what you're looking for in your end product, you can manipulate those 3 to try to see if you can get that consistency. You won't always nail it because some stuff just won't do what you want it to do. But most of this stuff is just a combination of heat, time, and pressure. And finding where you land on those three variables give you all of these different types of product. Now there's a little bit of filtering and stuff involved as well, but
Interesting.
mainly heat, time, and pressure, right?
You're like,
And
so you're turning minerals into gems now with
yeah,
heat,
or
time,
like
and pressure.
I guess bread too. Like that's probably a good like
Yeah, yeah, there you go.
the
Stay with.
longer you cook it, right, and the different heats you use to do it gives you different things like from croutons to like a nice soft loaf with a crust on it versus,
Oh
you know,
yeah,
like
a
a pizza dough
brioche.
or yeah, exactly, right? So everything is just little changes of small variables, and with hash it's heat, time, and pressure, right? So this what you're looking at is probably a cured hash. So what I would have done is I would have done that original stage of a low pressure and a low heat to form that log, and then I would have put it inside a seed mat, say vacuum sealed in parchment, and left it for. I'm assuming you know what I mean by seed mat, like those little seed warming mats that get about 80 or 90
Yeah,
degrees
yeah, yeah,
C.
yeah.
Yeah, I'll just put it inside that, fold it over inside a tote, and leave it for anywhere from 12 to 48 hours, and that kind of mimics uh, some
Wow.
of some of the aging process that you can get because you can age hashish for months, years, decades, right? And that would be like an aged hash would be like a low heat and a low pressure and a very long time, and that's where you're going to get some of those like traditional temple balls or some of that hash that's like really sticky and gooey, right? You
Gotcha.
because a lot of people they'll make a temple ball and immediately it will tighten up. So when it's warm, it's gooey, and then the second it cools down, it sounds like a marble on the table, and they go, "Oh well, I screwed up." Well, no, most hash is going to be like that when it's fresh, right? So what you don't realize is that it probably took 6 months, 8 months for that hash to get from the producer to you. And in that time, it's aged. Those terpenes have been able to eat away at those waxes, right? And then you've created a more gooey consistency with a long time, a low amount of heat. But you can amp the heat up to take the time down, right? And get generally the same thing. There's some things that you're going to be missing out on. There's some specific hash terpenes that only show up when you long age or long age hash. It's called hashing, and it's the breakdown of myrcene,
Oh,
usually without the oxygen. So when you make those temple balls, what you're doing is you're kind of getting a nice outer waxy layer. You see it's nice and shiny, right? that protects the
yeah.
in, that protects the inside of the ball, right? And what you're going to get is when that myrcene is breaking down without the oxygen around, it's converting just like THCA with heat turns into THC, with heat turns into CBN. You're going to get this myrcene breaking down into another compound, and that compound is hashine, which is why traditionally a lot of hashes, even though they're coming from a variety of different plants, right? We're smelling the same and having that flavor, that spicy hash, and I say hash in quotes flavor. When you smell it, you go, "Oh, that smells like hash." Well, that's the hashing that you're smelling because myrcene is um, one of the more prevalent terpenes in most things. You're going to get myrcene in high amounts, and as that breaks down in a long time, which you usually don't allow flour to do, it starts to smell the same because it all smells like hashing, which is that hash flavor that you're getting, right? And then you get some other things.
Interesting.
If people are interested in the aging of cannabis, the Trichome Research Initiative on the Frenchy Cannoli webpage has done a short, like 6 months to a year, I think, aging study, and they can go see the conversion and breakdown of different terpenes and cannabinoids over that aging process, right? But generally speaking, 6 months is about a decent amount of time just to age to have those things happen if you're looking for that sort of profile.
That's incredible, man. I mean, so I guess I guess just to walk me through my home grow, hash making process here, temple ball making process, I guess is the step after, like step 5 in your process is, like you said, putting parchment paper and hand pressure on that hash, but super refined trichome heads, and making it into a ball, like a dough ball, literally.
Yeah, so you're going to have to heat it a little bit and work it around, maybe reheat
Work.
it,
Yeah.
right? And just get all those, because what you're also doing is it's kind of like oranges. You're kind of like crushing them, right? You're smashing them to get the juices out of the center, right? So you
Okay.
want to rupture the heads of those trikes a little bit in order to get them kind of worked around. And the more you rupture them, the more kind of mix you're going to get. If you're looking to keep something um, kind of the way you had it, you can keep those resin heads just the way they were in a glass jar in the fridge or in the freezer, and they'll stay
And
just as fresh as the day you made them, and you can smoke them just like that. There's nothing
gotcha.
wrong with putting that in a pipe or
That when you
flagging
get
it out
like
right when you
this.
need it. Yeah, that's more of a rosin press. So that's a type of
Okay,
rosin that I was making.
that's been pressed too.
Yeah, but like you can just keep it as the raw loose resin. We'd call that loose
Gotcha.
resin, and
Okay.
you can keep that frozen, and then you can just hand press it when you want a little bit of hash, but you don't want that aged profile, right? Because once you rupture those heads, there's no going back. That chemical process is kind of going to start. So as you
Starts right there.
right, so
Understood.
you're gonna change it. If that's what you're looking for, that's great. But if that's not what you're looking for, and you don't like or you don't want that aged sort of um, high or that age profile, whatever that may be, then you can just keep them loose, right? So technically, these are loose resin heads, and I wouldn't say they're hashish yet because hashish is more of like the ruptured heads all together as
Mm,
one,
look at
right? And then
that
it,
big Tootsie Roll, dude. Oh my lord. That just, I mean, that's amazing, man. I just like the little bit of parchment paper, roll that log between my hands. I mean,
So the difference between hash and hashish is really like total rupture of all of the heads.
no, hash is just a short way to say
Or to say
hashish, right?
hashish.
Yeah,
All
but
right.
rosin, I don't like, and I'll get in probably a couple fights over this. Um, Rosin is not hash. Rosin is a different, like once you start taking away that whole head product, right? And you
mm,
start stripping things away, then you're not. So BHO is not hash. Shatter is not hash. Rosin is not hash, right? Hash is the full trike head amalgamated together into a product, right? That's hashish.
man, Badger's gonna love this guy. Can- we got a listeners usually in the chat who's a Temple Ball man. Actually, for only one of I think the only time I've ever tried a Temple Ball or any type of hash like this was his at the meetup, and it like knocked my socks off. It like cut through all the other noise, man. Like stuff like this really does its next level. You know, any smoker is just gonna be like, wow. That's something. That's something else, man. Everyone's got rosin nowadays. You can go to the dispo and find that white looking, goopy. If you like a little like tacky, we can find that too. It's all gonna be white. It's all gonna be kind of like, I don't know, a little bit of like missing something. I guess I would say if we're talking about like this, the type of stone you get from like this full head hash.
Yeah, definitely, because it's just different slices, right? Like technically, like people like to say full spec this and full spec that. I think like full spec is the flower, right? Because you're actually getting the full spectrum as you smoke it. And as you further refine that, you're getting from a broad spectrum product to a narrow spectrum product. So like the broadest
Mm,
spectrum you're going to get is probably BHO because it's stripping out most of the cannabinoids of most of the heads, even the ones that were too small to get into different collections, right? And then
yeah,
as you further refine it, right, you get into these broad spectrum hash products that are a wide micron range from say 25 to 45 microns up into the 190 to 220, and then you you find that the narrowest slices usually in like full melt hash products or in rosins where they take a 73 to um, like or a 90 even to 101 or 119 or they're very small slices, so you are getting a really concentrated high terpene maybe, but the effects may not be the same because you're only getting a small slice, right? So um, it's kind of like a charcuterie board or a platter, right?
Yeah.
The flour is the full thing, and then you're starting to strip things away. So yeah, you might get like the best flavor of prosciutto ham out of that, but you're not going to get a cheese and a cracker and a few other flavors and a few other effects of those things all mixed in together, right? So there's some people that want that and are really into that, and yeah, the flavor from a very narrow spectrum rosin is going to be super concentrated, and the high is going to be um, very pointed. But I
Oh,
find
I like
the
that term.
yeah, the earlier they pull the flower and the tighter that micron is, the more zippy that high might be, the more quick up and down. It's like a roller coaster, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's fast up, fast down.
Yep.
Guys
Yep.
are dabbing maybe 15 or 20 minutes later to keep on the roller coaster, right? They go up and down. Whereas if you were to take the same amount of like an aged hash whole like broader spectrum hash or like a broader spectrum full head 6 star or 5 star melt, right? Then you're getting more of that spectrum and you're getting more effects with that entourage and other things
It's like a
to where that high is going to be a little more well rounded.
an
There may be
old
things,
wooden roller coaster that just keeps you going super fast and like rickety, holding on for dear life the whole time.
yeah, or even like a hot
Just
air balloon. It's slow to go up,
yeah,
it keeps you
yeah.
up there for a
Keeps
while,
you
and
up
it's slow
there.
to
Yeah,
go
I know
down,
for
right?
sure. That's a
Yeah,
much better
so
analogy.
and it's all what people like. Some people want a quick 20-minute dab because that's what fits in their life, right? They want to get ripped, really stoned, enjoy their 20 minutes, and then be back to normal to be able to do what they want to do. And other people, want to lay in the sunshine for 3 hours and feel like they're floating on a cloud, right? And it's whatever works for your life and
Yeah,
whatever
yeah.
works for what you're trying to achieve from the product. But there's lots of products out there. And just
Ah,
because one might not work, you maybe just find another one that is,
for sure, man.
more
No,
geared to what you're looking at.
I think that's confirming a lot of thoughts I've had about just about extracts in general. Like I think a lot of people are moving just towards those ultimately anyway. If we can, as growers, as tent pirates, make our own super high quality extracts here, I mean, like I don't see any reason why we're not going to do that.
I mean, maybe it's not even high quality, maybe it's trust, right? Because it's a lot easier to trust what's in your product when you've made it start to finish. It may not be
Mm,
the best product out there as far as quality goes, but it may be the best product for you because the quality is trustable, right? Like, how much can you trust the guy down the street that's growing and sharing with you, or the guy across the country, or that company that's trying to make money off the product? Some do a great job and do it with intention, and others just try to figure out what makes them the most money, and they're not really worried about the the quality of the product that's coming out. And that's not like the terpenes and the THC. It's like the quality of was it grown in a clean, sterile environment? Were there bug issues? Were there, different pesticides or sprays or other things used during the process, right? That you may not be comfortable with having used or,
yeah,
putting in your body, right? So some of it is just you're taking control like of that process so that you know exactly what's inside of what you're consuming, right? And some of that is the peace of mind that you get from that outweighs maybe some of the better qualities of some of these other things to give you an extract that you can enjoy more, right?
Yeah,
it's a
plus that
nice
sense of
knife, by the
pride.
way.
And you'll
Oh,
always
thanks.
get better and better. I
Yeah,
saw on
yeah.
your most recent post that you now have a vacuum inside your extract tent.
Here, we gotta go.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay. So I kind of did that video series as the last step in my kind of, for now, my static, because I've been talking to another guy for another year, year and a half, about what he's been up to, and his name is Hash Crew. He's amazing. He's on Instagram. He invents a lot of really cool things for hash makers, and one of the things he invented was the headhunter screen and this hashback sort of setup. I will say I did forget to mention what yields that people might expect from the hash, like the dry sift making process. And anywhere from 5 to about 18 to 20% is about where they're going to be to refine product, depending on a lot of different things. Um, but yeah, generally, if you're above 5% and in that 8 to 12% range, you're going to be in the normal natural range of what most products will get, and some things will get as high as 15 to 20. Some stuff will be 1 or 2, and it may not be worth it for you, but expect that most strains are going to get you anywhere between, say, 6 to 12% is a nice range to kind of sit in
Okay.
as the upper and lower of the normal
And that's
range.
from like weight of the trim that we've
Yes.
started with to
Yep.
the weight of the
Correct.
yeah, that
Yeah.
loose rosin as you called it, or loose resin.
Yeah, so somewhere between 1 to 2 ounces per pound is about where
Wow.
you're going to
Hey
hit,
man,
right?
that's not bad at all.
Exactly, right? So, yeah. Anyway, back to the hashback. So there's something special about this, and that's most of the screens that you use for this are square. As in, like when I say 75 micron or 63 micron, they are 63 microns tall by 63 microns wide, right? Which is great, but it means that when we're thinking about those heads as being like lollipops, they have to be oriented straight up and down, as in the lollipop head is sticking up and the stalk is down, or vice versa, right? In order to kind of make it through a hole. You can see this metal screen that I have on top. That's the headhunter screen, and that's what's more referred to as a wedge filter.
Okay.
Those holes are 73 microns wide by 600 microns long. So think about a grate, right? Where you're walking over it and your feet aren't falling through it, right? But the holes are a lot longer than they are wide, and that allows those stalks to be in much more different orientations and still make it through, right? So that's the idea of this is I have a vacuum hooked up to a vibrating sifter, and that sifter is doing the work of that brushing that I showed you earlier. So it's shaking everything, allowing it to fall through,
I
and then the
gotcha.
vacuum is constantly pulling down to kind of aid the process a little bit. And then as it gets onto that middle screen, the one with the metal on there, those heads can be in a lot more orientations and find their way through. So it's a way to refine it without using static. So you can even take just that one. They're called guillotine. Each one of those are called guillotinious 3D printing files that you can just print those up and make your own custom size screens. Um, so you can just take one of those off and just put like a lid on top of it and vacuum from below. And as you're pulling air down the middle, it's kind of throwing air up around and moving the product around, and you can just vacuum the dirt out of the hash, right? So that's the new tech that I'm working on.
That's
Now,
crazy, man.
the
Like the
interesting
Hadron Hash Collider.
exactly. So the interesting thing that this allows me to do is one, it takes away a lot of that manual work, right? Because I could do somewhere between, say, 90 and 150 grams per hour with the glove, but that's it, right? Unless I get bigger hands, right? There's no way of speeding that up. So it's not really
Yeah,
commercially scalable, right? In terms of
I
a
feel that.
process,
Yeah.
right? So this is one way that if you just get a bigger vacuum and a bigger screen, you can now do more product, right? And you can do a lot more product even through this in 20 or 30 minutes than you could do by hand in an hour, right? So it speeds things up a lot better.
Yeah, I think if that's really the element that is missing from the technology, like if it wants to truly, like, you want to get like static products at like a dispo, it's going to need to scale.
Yeah, but this wouldn't be static. This would be
Ah,
hashback,
gotcha,
right?
gotcha. True, just
But
hack hashback product.
exactly. So the other cool thing is because we're not relying on static electricity anymore, we can look at other things that we might be able to do. So let's say we have a live product that we've tumbled in a very cold environment and we've got the heads, but those heads are going to be way too sticky at room temperature or that 60 degrees to be able to run. And we can't run them in freezing because of static not working at freezing temperatures.
Hmm.
Well, now this may be capable of live, like cleaning up live keef or live sift, right? To be able to further refine that to be something that's more of a high quality product without having to, worry about trying to static it or something, right? So there are some interesting things that we could get into with this, where you could make, say, like a live sift rosin out of product the same day. So you could harvest it, maybe get it really cold, sift it, and then clean it up with this and press it into rosin within the matter of a couple of hours. Whereas if you're washing, you're going to need to freeze it for 24, and then you're going to need to wash it, and then you're going to need to put that in the freeze dryer for another 24 hours, and then you're going to, so you can have some interesting things that might come up from this system. I'm still working
Yeah.
it out. It's very early days. I'm not at the point where I'm ready to show the product I'm getting out of it, or talk about, writing some guides for people on how to use it. But we're slowly working towards that, and hopefully soon I'll have some interesting things to show from the dry product, and then I can start
That's
looking at
awesome.
those other aspects of where this can fit in the whole extraction process.
Oh my God, how fun. I swear to God, the people in our community are just the most
Ah,
ingenious minds. Incredible.
yeah.
I
This
can't wait to hear all
is
about it, how it turns out.
next level
Amazing.
stuff. I mean, truly, I'm blown away with your commitment to getting others super high. So,
I'm addicted to the process, right?
yeah, man. It's there's just a whole other like level to this stuff. Like, there's always another level. You think you're at like a high level. There's always another level. And I don't know what's higher than this. I don't know what level's higher than this. Truly, is like if you can turn your bags of trim post harvest into ultra refined trichome heads that you can then, through a combination of time, pressure, and heat, turn into whatever kind of beautiful hash you want. I'm telling you, it's
It's
just
amazing. It's a way of like
irresistible. Yeah.
shoving more love into a plant. Like you grew this whole plant with so much love and care, and now if you put this much love and care into processing
Yeah, the
afterwards,
processing.
it's just a little concentrated jar of love. I love it. Amazing. I cannot wait to try this.
For real. I can't either. And it's
So
just
really
giving
we
me.
just need like 3 screens, 2 brushes, a box of gloves.
And a mask. Yep.
And a mask. I
Good
have a
mask.
respirator, like full face mask respirator. So
Yeah.
I'm
So,
good with
what kind of screens do you use?
it.
I use Royal Royal extraction equipment, but
Okay.
anything on Amazon is mostly fine. Just look and make sure that it says nylon in the description,
Cool.
and they'll be fine. My screens are terribly expensive. They were designed by Tan Hat, that guy I talked about. So if somebody wants a forever screen, or mine are a lot bigger too. Mine are 25 by 36, where most screens are going to be 20 by 24, as far as like the size of them. So if you're looking to get like a premium high quality screen, that's definitely a great place to go. If you're just looking to dip your toe in, just get an Amazon set. They're like 90 bucks, 100 bucks maybe. And then from there you can decide, do I want something bigger? It's not a problem. And then you can, put the money in to get the last screen to kind of ever own.
Love it. No, just it's like we're just growing wheat, G3. We need to learn how to bake pizzas now. You know what I
Seriously, I
mean?
feel
Like,
like I have left so much untapped.
it's true.
The potential, so much wasted potential.
I know. And I got like I literally have a crate of trim. All the trim.
Is
Almost
your
all the trim.
trim frozen but
Frozen.
dry?
Frozen but dry.
Okay.
Correct.
That's probably not a bad thing to have. You'll have to make sure that you get it well, not rehydrated, but warmed up in an environment with like a lot of moving air, so that as that water comes off, it can
Okay.
it can be moved out. But yeah, definitely, I would say that that would probably be a great way. Or if you want, you could even keep it frozen, and if you have a tumbler, tumble it frozen, and then just worry about that after, because with with traditional dry sift, they were really worried about making that contamination, so they were very gentle. It was a tedious process. They were doing like a first bounce and then going through and collecting the material up and doing more because they couldn't get that dirt out. They were stuck with that same making contamination of the same size, right? But you can be really heavy-handed and you can just kind of collect and not worry about it and then deal with it after. You have a way of pulling all what you want out and leaving what you don't. So don't go crazy, but you can be quite heavy-handed. You could sift it or tumble it frozen, and not even have to worry about getting it warmed up again because I'm sure it's quite dry just from the fact that it's been sitting in the freezer, and just like freezer burn happens, right? It's probably made itself into quite a dry
Ah, yeah,
product. Yeah, so
most
you can try
likely.
to tumble it, or you could keep it out um, in a freezing environment if you have those kind of temperatures, and then just worry about rehydrating the keef after.
Hell yeah, man. That's exactly what I'm gonna do as soon as I get me some screens, some nitrile gloves, and a paintbrush.
Yeah, well, I'm down to help. I guess my motto is like each one teach one. I didn't invent any of this. I was taught how to do it by someone else who
Well,
was taught how to do it by someone else, and I'll keep that chain going. So if you're stuck, if you're interested, people can hit me up on Instagram, Discord, wherever they know me from. I have gotten on many video calls before and like pinpointed issues by saying, "Show me what you're doing," or
I
brought them
love
into my
that.
tent and showed them what I'm up to, right? Like people have their screens backwards or upside down, or have some little thing that's going to not make it work, and then they're going to kind of get discouraged. So I highly suggest, if you're going to get into this and you're kind of curious or whatever, I have copy paste, which I kind of put into my Instagram, but I have lots of little guides and different things. It's not much for me to just hit copy and paste and send you the information. I'm down for people to get into this tech, because the more people we have making hash, the better hash we're going to have, and the more informed community
Truth.
that we are. So don't feel like you can't reach out and ask me some questions. Um, don't just say like, I don't know anything and I don't want to do any work, but tell me everything I need to do. I'll give you some information. You can run with it, and you can come back and show me that like you've acted on that information and now you have new questions.
Oh
Absolutely
man,
fine. But if you're not going to put in a little bit of work to kind of take what I give you and like learn from it and do, then you might
then you
not,
get blocked. Yeah.
well, no, you don't get blocked, but you get out what you put in, and the harder you're working, the harder I'll work for you.
All right. Well, you're much nicer than me. When I get dumb questions, and people don't want to do any research at all and want to be spoon fed everything. That's when they get the
Well,
old
hey,
ban
I'll tell you where
hammer.
to start researching, right? And then just go out and you can watch those videos and do those things and come back. And if you have questions about it, I'm happy to answer, right? But yeah,
Well, that's awesome, man. I love the no gatekeeping. We it's one thing we love around here. Just access to the info. And I'll tell you, man, even people that are like up to their waist in the community. I mean, I've been around here. Like I've looked in lots of corners of this community, and I didn't know I could do this until tonight. I'm being real, like didn't put all the pieces together for me until tonight. But like really, what I can make super clean product out of bags of frozen dried trim that are sitting in my freezer waiting for this innovation to come along. Just like I have the resources, I've been hoarding them, just like it's cryogenically frozen, and hoping that in some point in the future, the technology will come. And look at it, it's finally come.
perfect.
My cryogenically frozen strains from 5 years ago are finally going to get brought back to life
Hey, well, it's a great
in a
way to get that
farmer's
flavor,
hash.
right?
And it's a good way to practice too. Something that you would have potentially thrown away either way. Get that motion down, get the
Definitely.
process down, and then you can
And
practice on the other
then,
stuff.
yeah, use some even better stuff coming fresher out the tent. I mean, shoot, we're always going to have trim.
Who knows? Maybe you'll start growing for stuff that gives you a better sift product, right? Because you can go from a flower farmer to a resin farmer. Because
There
if
you
you're going
go.
to be collecting the resin, right, and throwing the flower away, then it doesn't really matter what the flower looks like, right? As long as the resin is what you need it to be, then bag appeal and all that stuff goes out the window, and it's just what does the head look like? What's the structure of the head? What's inside the head? How does it react to these different
Oh,
things? So then that's another breeding um, line that you can go down to select for things that are going to give you a better end product of what you're looking for, right? So you may look at stuff like what's the not the biomass yield, but what is the resin per square foot you're getting out of your garden, right? Because if you're collecting the resin, you don't care if you're getting 4 pounds per light. If you're getting an ounce per square foot and something else gives you 2 ounces per square foot, well, it doesn't matter if you're only getting 2 pounds per light versus four, right? You're getting more hash in the end, or even um, resin per square foot per year, right? Because you're held by time in your garden. So maybe there's one that gives you less resin, but it finishes in 56 days instead of 82, right? And now you can get at least another grow or two in, and in the end of the year, you'll have more ounces of hash. So those are some metrics that you can look for. If you're growing for resin, is resin that's going to be extractable or like the extraction method that you're currently using, right? Because you can either grow what you grow and find an extraction method to fit it, or extract the way you extract and find something to grow to fit it, right? And then you can start dialing in your garden for what are the things that give me more resin per square foot, or resin per square foot per year, or a higher quality resin on the outside or at the end of the process.
hell yeah. PhD in hash math.
Dude, yeah, absolutely. What was it? Resin per foot per
Per
year?
year.
Like resin per
Resin per
square
square
foot.
foot per
First,
year.
Yeah.
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 Or if
That's
you're
like,
held to some of these 4 plant outdoor or 6 plant outdoor grows, it may be resin per plant, right? So maybe one plant can get a lot bigger, right? So it's like depending on what you're doing. If you're purchasing the material, then you're going to care about the yield percentage, right? Like, are you a 14% or a 12 or a 6, right? But if you're growing it, then depending on what metrics you have available to you or constraints you have on your growing process, whether that's room or number of plants, because maybe you can have 2,200 square foot of canopy, but you're only allowed to grow 4 plants, right? Or whatever it is, right? So depending on what you're looking at, it's just how much resin can I produce out of the space in the rules
yeah.
that I have to produce it in the time that I have to do it, right?
I love that. It's an Excel smorgasbord. Give
Oh,
me
there's
all
a
the
lot of hash math
data.
out there for data and statistics nerds, right?
Hash
Oh, that's
math.
so
I
fun.
love it.
So, Woody, remind everybody exactly what your Instagram handle is and the best way to contact you, if that's it, or Discord or whatever.
Instagram is great. It's at hvsh.rookie. I had hash rookie and they banned that, so I'm still hash rookie. I just flipped the A upside
Dude,
down
why are you lying about being a rookie, though?
because every day I learn something new, right? And there's always someone
All
better.
right.
And doesn't matter if I did it for 20 or 30 or 50 years. There's somebody in a producing country that's family has done it for 200. So I'm
Okay.
never going to
Fair. Fair.
be. And once you start calling yourself the wizard or the master, then I don't know. I just don't consider myself
I
that.
All I
I'm
know
a
is that
student.
I know nothing.
Yeah.
right. It's much more humble approach than hash master.
I mean, some people are, and that's fine for them. But
Yo,
I
you're
don't
a
know.
hash master to me, dude, and that's I'm sure to a lot of other people listening and watching out there. So we really appreciate you coming on and sharing your
So
knowledge of,
amazing.
well, it's really post harvest processing that like a lot of us growers kind of neglect and haven't really learned. This is amazing. Like we can finally make pizzas with all of our wheat
Awesome.
I love it.
or something
Anything
like
else
that.
you'd like to share with us tonight, Woody?
Just a reminder for everyone to be safe. So put those masks on, right? Make sure that you're doing the right things and don't spray your plants, right? You're concentrating 10 or 20 to 1. So what a gram of flour had on it, you're now looking at 10 or 12 grams of flour into your 1 gram. So you're really super concentrating these in a lot of issues. So maybe you were under in whatever you were doing before, and now that you're concentrating it, you're going to be over on allowable limits for things. So it's always a good idea to do not spray, especially in flour. Don't spray, because you're just going to end up not doing what you want if you're going to be making hash for it. So yeah,
Oh
that's
yeah,
it. Other
man.
than that, thanks.
We would
Thanks for
never
having me on.
advocate spraying nothing in flour. That's a no bueno situation, no matter what.
But thank you so much
Yeah, dude.
for joining us
No
tonight.
problem.
This was
Loved it. Loved the
absolutely
chance to talk.
amazing. Incredible.
For
And
sure.
we'll have to have you come back on after you got your vac stuff
Yeah,
solid, and you can tell us all about that.
Hadron
Yeah, I have a
Hash
few
Collider
standing
is
offers
turned
of
on.
podcasts where they said, once you figure out live sifting, then come on back on and let us know. So I will gladly, once I figure it out.
Hey man, we'll be watching, and I'll send you a link to the Discord. Are you on
I'm in it,
Discord
yep.
at
We're
all?
already in it.
All right, well, shoot.
got it.
All right, well, then that's a call to everyone else out there who's listening, who hasn't yet joined the Discord. Come on over, hang out with Hash Rookie, myself, G3, everyone else in our awesome community, and just imagine the things you'll learn. Oh, the plants you'll grow. But yeah, start by coming over to the Discord. And dude, again, Woody, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing all of this info.
No problem. Thanks for giving me the platform to do it.
Oh, it's our pleasure, really. And yeah,
Thank you, Chad, for hanging with us tonight. Always got to remember our guys.
yes, the live chat, who we didn't give any shout outs to tonight. I'm sorry, guys. A few real quick before we go. We got the Smoke Ring hanging in there till the end. Sonoma Sungrown, Buzzy 7844, Grinch Grower, Great Racer, Kush Cat. Anyone else? Carden Boy. A lot more, yeah. Jsa, Caterpillar Killer. Everyone, thank you guys.
Love you guys being here with us. Thank you.
And yeah, most important of all, until next time, above all else, no matter what, don't get caught.